I did a video recently talking about the best RPG of all time, and people in the comments came for me for talking about a game that was not Baldur's Gate 3. So I thought 2 years since the release of Baldur's Gate 3, maybe it was time to revisit it, as one of the greatest one of the greatest games ever made. Baldur's Gate 3 is utterly unique. By every modern metric, it shouldn't have worked. It was too niche, too slow, too wordy, and too traditional. And yet it became one of the most celebrated games of all time. This was a game built with no shortcuts, no content roadmaps, no battle passes, and yes, annoyingly, no DLC, just a studio with a singular vision and a belief that players would care about quality again. While most of the industry was bleeding talent and trust, rushing out broken live service games and calling them platforms, Larian Studios quietly built a masterpiece that reminded everyone why we play and that yes, Dungeons and Dragons and natural 20s do belong outside the tabletop. And please, if you guys enjoy deep dives like this, do like and subscribe. It helps the channel enormously. The Baldur's Gate name was legendary long before Larian touched it. Back in 1998, BioWare's original Baldur's Gate helped define the Western RPG. Tactical combat, sprawling dialogue, moral choice, party banter that made you care about the characters. It was arguably the blueprint for games like Dragon Age, Mass Effect, and even The Witcher. But after Baldur's Gate 2 in 2000, the series completely vanished. BioWare moved on, the CRPG genre faded, and real-time isometric combat gave way to cinematic storytelling and quick-time events. The idea of bringing it back, and in 2023 no less, felt impossible. But Larian Studios had already proven something with Divinity Original Sin 2, their old school design could still evolve and could still capture audiences. So when Wizards of the Coast handed them the keys to Baldur's Gate, they didn't just inherit a license, they inherited a legacy of freedom and player choice. And they did the one thing most studios would not dare to do. They actually earned it. They built everything on top of the 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons rules. They didn't dumb it down for mass audiences, they simply trusted us as players to learn. They knew that the magic of D&D wasn't about stats or loot. It's about choice. Although, obviously stats and loot do play a huge role. High charisma bards for the win, by the way. If most big studios feel like corporations, then Larian felt like an independent garage band. They've always been independent, they self-fund, although, for clarity and honesty purposes, it is worth noting that Tencent do own 30% of Larian shares, something most people don't seem to realize. But they make weird, passionate games that could fail spectacularly, and they do it anyway. When development began, there were no suits breathing down their necks, there was no Microsoft-style quarterly shareholders reports, just the obsession to get the game right. This all started with their beta period, which began around 2020. It in turn became something of a myth. For 3 years, the game grew organically through a well-managed feedback loop between players and the developers. Larian read player reports, they watched streams, they even interacted with streams, they integrated community ideas directly into the final build of the game. The result was a game that felt alive before it was released, with an incredibly connected and involved community from day one. And unlike the endless crunch stories in AAA studios, Larian became a symbol of integrity. Sven, the studio head, became something of a folk hero, standing on stage in full plate armor at reveals, laughing through interviews, promising no microtransactions, no live service hooks. And what was so refreshing is that none of this was a marketing stunt. It was honesty and integrity at a time when the industry often lacks both. In an industry obsessed with endless monetization, Larian simply said, no, we will finish the game, then you can buy it, and that's that. What makes Baldur's Gate 3 so special is that the core of the game isn't graphics or mechanics, it's your creative freedom. Every quest, every interaction, every combat encounter has a dozen possible outcomes, often more. You can talk, sneak, fight, or manipulate your way through the story, and every option feels like a legitimate right option for you to take. It rarely feels like you have taken the wrong branch in a story. You can romance your companions, you can betray them, hell, you can kill them, or you can save them. You can be a saint, a monster, or something painfully human in between. And it's not scripted in the way most games fake choice. There's no illusion, there's no branching tree that folds back into the same outcome. If you kill a major NPC, they're gone. Quests break, the story shifts. Even dialogue checks matter. That single dice roll, that flickering D20 has more emotional weight on top of it than some AAA endings. Sometimes you fail, sometimes you ruin everything. I've had a single dice roll make me go back hours in gameplay. Don't pretend you haven't also. I see you, I know that you have. That's what makes a game so successful. Because in Baldur's Gate 3, failure is part of the story. Unless, like me, said failure, infuriated you so much that you had to go back hours of gameplay and, save scam a little bit. But, you haven't got to do that. You just can if you want to, like me. I did, many times. Players aren't being told what kind of hero they are. They're discovering it through chaos, through improvisation, through role-playing in the truest sense. This is the Dungeons & Dragons fantasy made real. You aren't just playing a character, you are genuinely inhabiting them. And what makes this world unforgettable isn't just its quest or its lore or its choice, it's the people and characters who walk beside you. Astarion, Shadowheart, Karlach, I never say this name right, Lae'zel, Gale, Will, Halsin, each of them feels alive. Not because of dialogue options, because of how human they are. Although I will say this right now, and I would die on this hill, Astarion annoyed the ever-loving fuck out of me. I do not understand how some of the community's obsession with that character. Maybe it's a me thing, I just never took him as a companion. Which isn't to say the voice acting was not phenomenal. And I think that's one of the game's many strengths, is the voice acting is among the highest quality I have ever seen in games, full stop, overshadowing Kingdom Come 2 by a mile. We get so many incredibly well-written, nuanced characters, delivered and performed with such depth of tone and emotion. Every character evolves, and they evolve because of you and your actions. Your decisions don't just change the world, they change people, specifically those that are along for the ride with you. It's easy to forget that these are digital constructs with their performances are this strong. The motion capture, the voice acting, the subtle facial animations, all of it combines to create genuine empathy. Players don't just like their companions, they fall for them, argue about them, defend them online, sometimes way too much. That level of emotional engagement is rare, and it's something Larian earned through sincerity, not manipulation. They did not tell us how to feel about these characters, they simply showed us who they were and allowed us to decide. On paper, Baldur's Gate 3 shouldn't work for modern audiences. It's turn-based, it's tactical, it's brutally punishing, but somehow Larian turned that completely into creativity. Every combat encounter feels like a puzzle, some painfully more complex than others. The environment itself becomes a weapon. Shove enemies off cliffs, ignite barrels, electrify water. It rewards experimentation, not repetition. Even the way it translates tabletop dice rolls into cinematic moments is genius. You see your roll, you feel the stakes, that tension, that please God let me roll a 17 minimum moment is pure D&D magic. And that's the secret. It's not just a digital D&D campaign, it's a shared experience. Players compare stories like war veterans. I accidentally blew up the Druid Grove. My Astarion bit the wrong person. I rolled a natural 1 trying to flirt with a bear. How do you think that ended? No two players see the same story, and yet everyone walks away with a version that feels definitively theirs. That storytelling power that transcends writing, that is design philosophy 101. It's hard to even comprehend how big this game actually is. There are over 17,000 ending variations. Note, ending variations, not endings. People get real funny about the difference between those two. Over 174 hours of fully voiced cinematics, more dialogue written than Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, and Game of Thrones combined. Let that sink in. That's a fuckload of words. And yet it's all handcrafted. There's no procedural shortcuts, there's no AI-generated quests. Every line was written, recorded, animated, and tested by real people. And it all works. Sure, there are bugs. The game is simply too big not to have bugs. But nothing close to the catastrophic launches we have come to expect. Larian's engine somehow hold it together across PC, PS5, and even Steam Deck. That level of optimization is staggering. Visually, it's beautiful. Not because it's photorealistic, but because it's tabletop art design made real in the digital space. Lighting, composition, animation, it all feels crafted by artists, not pipelines. It's the rare game where you stop and realize how much love went into every frame. Also, claim to fame, one of the studios I worked at actually worked on some of the art for this game. So yeah, there you go. When it launched, Baldur's Gate 3 became an instant phenomenon. Steam charts broke under the weight of its player base. Social media was flooded with clips, memes, and emotional reactions. Entire forums became therapy groups for Karlach's fans and Astarion stans. I do not like the second. Within weeks, it hit 5 million copies sold. Within months, 10 million. It won Game of the Year, swept BAFTAs, and redefined what AAA even meant. Although that did seem to really piss off some AAA devs in the process. Maybe its biggest impact was what it symbolized. In a year where most big publishers were laying off thousands and shipping broken games, Baldur's Gate 3 felt like a rebellion A game that said we can do better, and look, here's the proof. It sparked industry-wide discussions about player respect, pricing, and creative freedom. Developers praised it publicly, some admiring, others terrified. Because if one studio could do this, what excuse did everyone else have? I also do think, for clarity, it's really important here to stress that Larian's core team for Baldur's Gate 3 was around 400 people, and anywhere north of 2,000 people worked on the game. I say this because I often see people claim Baldur's Gate 3 was made by a small studio, and well, that simply is not true. It was, however, a wake-up call for the AAA space and studios and developers vying for our attention and our money. Because Baldur's Gate 3 shattered myths that single-player games don't sell well, that gamers only want quick dopamine loops, and that you need DLC or microtransactions to survive. Larian did absolutely none of that and outperformed almost everyone. They reminded developers that passion is not a buzzword. When you make something extraordinary, people will pay for it, they will love it, and they will even evangelize it. Baldur's Gate 3 redefined player trust, not through hidden monetization, not through an unfinished roadmap, simply because it launched complete. And players noticed. But I'm sure I speak for all of us when I say some DLC would have been appreciated, just saying. Again, just like a little, I don't know, a little some in there. The lesson is not that every game needs to be this big. It's that every studio needs to care as much as Larian Studios did. Behind all the systems and the storytelling, there's something much simpler. Baldur's Gate 3 at its core is about connection. Between players and companions, between choices and consequences, and between a developer and its audience. You can feel the fingerprints of the people who made it. Every quest line, every moral dilemma, every heartbreaking line of dialogue carries empathy, and it carries respect for the players and it love for the setting. And maybe that's why it hits so hard. Because while most of the industry is chasing data metrics, Larian decided to chase emotion. They remembered that games aren't just entertainment, they're stories that we live through and engage with. Baldur's Gate 3 is not perfect. It's at times buggy, chaotic, and dense. But perfection is not the point, and it never should be. It's a rare kind of miracle. A game that trusts players completely, and in return, earns our love and our trust back. It's not trying to manipulate engagement or retention, it's simply trying to move you, and it's trying to be fun. And maybe that's why it matters so much. In a time when the gaming world feels over-commercialized, over-designed, and underloved, Larian reminded us that's what this medium can do. It reminded us that video games can be art, that they can make us laugh, cry, and feel genuine human emotion, all through lines of code. And that's why Baldur's Gate 3 isn't just one of the best games ever made, it's one of the most important. Not because of sales, or awards, or records, although God did have a lot of all of those, but because it made us believe in games again. And that's everything for me at Devoured Games. If you have enjoyed this, please let me know in the comments down below. And until next time, something, something, something.